Salem Witch Trials: Fear, Hysteria, and Injustice. In the late 17th century, a quiet Puritan settlement in Colonial, Massachusetts became the epicenter of one of the most infamous episodes of mass hysteria in history, the Salem Witch Trials. What began as strange behavior in a small group of girls spiraled into a terrifying wave of accusations, fear, and executions, leaving a permanent scar on the American conscience. The trials serve as a grim reminder of the dangers of unchecked fear, religious extremism, and the consequences of societal panic. The seeds of fear. The Salem Witch Trials unfolded in the deeply religious and superstitious community of Salem Village, now present-day Danvers, Massachusetts, in 1692. Puritan settlers lived in a strict society governed by the belief that God's will dictated every aspect of life. The Puritans were suspicious of anything that deviated from their religious doctrines and believed that the devil could infiltrate their lives, tempting and corrupting people, particularly women, who were considered more susceptible to sin. Tensions in Salem had already been brewing before the witchcraft panic erupted. The village was rife with disputes over land ownership, family rivalries, and a growing divide between those who lived in the more prosperous town and those in the rural village. Additionally, the recent King Philip's War and ongoing threats from Native American attacks heightened the settlers' anxiety and insecurity. These social, political, and economic tensions created the perfect storm for fear and paranoia to take hold. The mysterious illnesses. In January 1692, Betty Parris, the 9-year-old daughter of Salem's minister, Reverend Samuel Parris, and her 11-year-old cousin Abigail Williams, began experiencing bizarre symptoms. They screamed uncontrollably, threw themselves into violent fits, and claimed to feel as though they were being pinched and pricked by invisible forces. Unable to explain the girls' behavior, the local physician diagnosed them as being under the influence of witchcraft. Soon, other girls in the village, Ann Putnam, Mercy Lewis, and Mary Walcott, exhibited similar symptoms. The girls accused 3 women of practicing witchcraft: Tituba, a Caribbean slave in the Parris household; Sarah Good, a local beggar; and Sarah Osborne, an elderly woman who had fallen out of favor with the Puritan community. These women, seen as outsiders in Salem, were easy targets for suspicion. The first accusations and trials. The trials began in earnest in March of 1692, when the 3 accused women were brought before local magistrates. The proceedings quickly took on a fervent religious tone. The court relied heavily on spectral evidence, testimony in which accusers claimed they saw the specter or ghost of the accused person committing acts of witchcraft, even though no physical evidence existed. Under intense pressure and fear of execution, Tituba confessed to witchcraft, claiming that the devil had appeared to her and that other women in Salem were also in league with him. Her confession fueled the panic, and soon more women, and even men, were accused of witchcraft. The number of people accused skyrocketed, with accusations spreading across the region. The judicial process that followed was deeply flawed. The accused were presumed guilty unless they could prove their innocence, which was nearly impossible. Many of those accused were poor, marginalized, or people with enemies within the community, making them easy targets for accusations. The Puritan leaders of Salem believed that they were engaged in a battle against the forces of evil, and anyone could be a suspect. Mass hysteria and execution. As the hysteria spread, more than 200 people were accused of witchcraft, and the trials became more frantic and unjust. Governor William Phips established a special court to hear the cases, known as the Court of Oyer and Terminer. Presiding over the trials was Judge Samuel Sewall, along with prominent religious figures such as Cotton Mather, who supported the use of spectral evidence. From June to September 1692, 19 people, 14 women and 5 men, were hanged after being convicted of witchcraft. Among them was Rebecca Nurse, an elderly and respected member of the community whose conviction shocked many. Another notable victim was John Proctor, a farmer who had openly criticized the witch trials, but was nevertheless accused, tried, and executed. Giles Corey, a man in his 80s, was pressed to death with heavy stones for refusing to enter a plea. The accused were subjected to brutal interrogations and public humiliation. Some were forced to confess under torture or to implicate others to save themselves from execution. The trials created an atmosphere of paranoia, where neighbors turned on neighbors, friends on friends, and even family members accused one another of witchcraft. Fear of the unknown and religious zealotry had taken control of the community, driving the villagers to extremes. The end of the trials and the aftermath. By the fall of 1692, the frenzy began to subside. As the number of accusations grew, skepticism about the legitimacy of the trials started to creep in. Reverend Increase Mather, a prominent minister and father of Cotton Mather, publicly criticized the reliance on spectral evidence, arguing that it was unreliable and could lead to the conviction of innocent people. Governor Phipps finally intervened, ordering the court to stop accepting spectral evidence and eventually disbanding the Court of Oyer and Terminer altogether. In 1693, Governor Phipps officially pardoned the remaining accused witches and declared an end to the trials. In total, 20 people had been executed and several others had died in jail awaiting trial. The Salem Witch Trials had left a lasting legacy of injustice and tragedy. Over time, the people of Salem came to realize the grave mistakes they had made. In the years following the trials, many of those involved, including Judge Samuel Sewall, publicly apologized for their roles in the proceedings. The Massachusetts General Court eventually declared the trials unlawful, and efforts were made to compensate the families of the victims. Legacy of the Salem Witch Trials. The Salem Witch Trials remain one of the darkest chapters in American history. They serve as a cautionary tale about the dangers of mass hysteria, scapegoating, and the breakdown of justice under the influence of fear. The trials revealed how a combination of social pressures, religious extremism, and superstition could lead to devastating consequences when unchecked. Today, the trials are often seen as a symbol of the human capacity for irrational behavior in the face of fear and the tragic outcomes that can result when justice is abandoned. The Salem Witch Trials have inspired countless books, plays, films, and works of art, serving as a powerful reminder of the importance of reason, fairness, and empathy in the administration of justice. In modern times, the term witch hunt is often used to describe unfair persecution or political scapegoating, a lasting legacy of the terrifying events that unfolded in Salem more than 300 years ago.